This today is Frederick J. Stemp Jr. This is Freddie. 5 years before we met, when he was a cop wannabe, or what you know as a cadet. Over 20 years ago, on Good Friday, 1999, while en route to a church for Easter services, Levite, was pulled over while driving to said church by City of Duluth, Georgia police officer Frederick J. Stemp Jr. On this particular Good Friday evening, while driving through the city of Duluth, Georgia, on my way to some mega McChurch in Alpharetta, I was pulled over for speeding by Frederick J. Stemp Jr. This is how I looked just 24 hours after Freddie pulled me over. It is a very long story that you'll be able to read by clicking on either the link either below or on your screen. The pictures were taken after I bailed out the next day and went to a hospital where they did an MRI and found the 3 fractured ribs and a sprained ankle. That cost me like $1,200. So over the years, I thought about this injustice done to me. Most on my mind was the way Stemp lied on the stand at trial, thus sealing my fate. My life has been turned upside down, and all because an acquaintance of Freddie's, a cop from Alabama, was buried that morning, and Freddie had attended the funeral of this cop, who wrote the book on how to profile a drug dealer, whose class Freddie had. About 15 years later, after having thought of Frederick J. Stemp Jr. repeatedly over the years, I decided to write the story about what happened between us and publish it at my blog, usatakeover.com. It was during the start of the 2016 presidential election. The year was 2015, and Donald Trump had announced he was running for the office of the presidency. Every day I thought of Stemp. Just 1 month before Donald had descended down that golden escalator, I had at that time put my book's script back on the internet for all to read. I never liked the jerk and had been trying to inform the American public about the con man for 30 years now. I had it on for a decade, but took it off for a while. So, at the same time I had been placing my feelings about Donald Trump online, I was also placing online, on that same blog, my views about the police, which is not flattering. In an attempt at making amends with Officer Frederick J. Stemp Jr., I contacted him to teach him of the hell his bearing false witness has created for me every day since we met. He was sent links to read Without a Gun online and to read about my thoughts about the police and himself. His response was that, yeah, he remembered me and he called me convict. After a volley of messages between us, he blocked me and suspended his Twitter account. He was too cowardly to discuss what really happened the evening of my arrest in 1999. That really aggravated me. I believe I may have threatened him, or he may have threatened me. I let it drop, but I continued to watch him as much as I could and made the time for. In the spring of 2018, I began looking for a boat to leave here with. I was looking for a 40-footer, give or take 5 feet, that I could live on, anchored in some island lagoon in the Bahamas or anywhere else. If I didn't leave the United States, I felt I would end up killing myself. Now, when I say kill myself, I don't mean by my hands. I mean by my 30-year nemesis, Donald Trump. During the summer of 2018, while I was contemplating Harry Carey for not being able to find a boat or being unable to warn the American people of the president, I learned that I could self-publish through Amazon. But that experience, I learned more about the publishing business than I really wanted to know. It seemed that every business I got involved with is corrupt. In September of that year, everything was set up with the Without a Gun, and Without a Gun was published using Amazon Kindle. But Amazon did not keep their end of the bargain. After recording the only sale made the night of publication, no other sales were ever recorded. I know they existed because people wrote to me and told me that they bought one. This noncompliance by Amazon, not to admit this was happening, was sending me into a frenzy. I soon left Amazon for Barnes & Noble. This is a very long story that you will read more about by clicking on the link on your screen or below in the description. At the time of all this was coming to a head, I was sending my many letters. They were getting quite, shall we say, colorful. I was concerned they may try to kill me to shut me up. Many thoughts of Fred Stemp and how he screwed me just like Amazon was doing was filling my head as well. On December 16, 2018, I sent 2 emails stating to the recipients that I was going to kill them. They were just idle threats, but I didn't care. I wanted those who put me in hell to know how I felt about them. I should have said that I wanted to kill them rather than I would do such an act. When I sent Fred the email, I also sent him a couple of links and asked him if he had Googled himself in a while. I did that because I noticed he hadn't been on the site in a while. At least the old IP address hadn't shown up in a while. He clicked on the link and I had his new IP address. Fred Stemp made a lot of logins. And if you also notice here today, February 29th, basically it's pretty early in the morning on March 1st when I'm making this recording. And if you notice February 29th at quarter after 8 and 10 after 8, he pretty much read. You know, Fred's still looking at the site. He hadn't been on since December 24th. Well, the morning of the 25th, the night of the 24th. Early morning on the 25th of December, Christmas. But here he is on now. Oh well, poor Freddy. As a social and physical science major in college would do, I too studied the effects of physical causes. The cause and effect theory. For each and every action there is an opposite yet equal reaction. Newton's third law. Using this theory to find out why I am here, we could conclude that it is because of the alleged email I sent to Fred Stemp on December 16, 2018. Yes, that may be a cause of this effect. However, the true cause of why we are really here goes back decades. It really started on Good Friday, 1999. It had been only 2 years since I had come out of hiding from Donald Trump. I was beginning to put my life back together. I got a driver's license, an apartment in Gwinnett County, and I was attending a well-accredited computer school that would find me a job after graduation. But I also had a cousin from Pennsylvania that lived in the area who was a born-again Christian type and attended a megachurch in Alpharetta, Georgia. I left the church while I was in high school after learning about what they did to Galileo and Bruno back in the day, and the fact that they still hadn't admitted that the world was round and the earth was not the center of the universe. That didn't come until 1982 or 84. Google it. Anyway, she wanted me to attend this church she was so proud of. Against my better judgment, I agreed to attend. My introduction would be on Good Friday. Now, while all this was in the making, a police officer who wrote the book on, how to profile a drug dealer was murdered by a drug dealer on the highway. And it happened to be that on that very same day, on Good Friday, 1999, they buried him. And in attendance was Frederick J. Stemp, Jr. Frederick Stemp was a student of the officer whom they buried that morning of April 4th, 1999. That officer taught Fred how to spot a drug dealer by sight as the people drove by him. It was also a drug dealer that killed the officer from Alabama. So Fred begins his shift. It was the start of Easter. The time was rush hour. I was traveling through Duluth, Georgia, to Alpharetta, while Freddie was set up in a construction area, I believe, monitoring the heavy traffic of that time. As I traveled through the area, I traveled at a rate of speed not in excess of the speed limit and within the flow of traffic. Stemp saw me drive by. Me, with my long hair, bearded man driving an older car with dents in it. Short time later, I saw the cherries of a police car in my rearview mirror. I knew what this was about the moment he walked up and I saw the black electrical tape all over his back. That incident is written about on my blog, so I won't go into detail. But the gist of what happened is this. I was never speeding. Was never issued a speeding ticket for this incident or any other in my 40 years of driving. While I was stopped under the threat of violence, I had given Officer Stemp what he had requested, my paper. Freddie just wasn't happy with that. He wanted to play 20 questions with me as though I were a drug runner. I asked him to just write me up the ticket and let me go on my way. And Freddie, he wasn't having any of that free man barking orders at a public servant until he showed me the authority he had, and I showed him that I respected that authority. In order to lower my window more than it had been, and after I had given him my papers, I refused. He took out his mace, started shaking it, and called for backup. When I saw that, I panicked. I grabbed hold of the window roller upper and began to roll up the window in order to avoid a face full of mace or pepper spray or whatever it was. When Fred saw that, he dropped his mace and stuck both hands through the window. Only being able to get his fingers in before the window was closed. He began to scream for me to release him. I stated not until his backup arrived. When they did arrive and put a gun to my head from the other window, I released him and exited the car. What happened after that was this macing and beating that I took. So the real reason why we are here today isn't because it was my own fault that I was once speeding on a road in Duluth, Georgia. It is because Fred J. Stemp Jr. wanted to play the sovereign over me and make me respect my authority and make me pay for the death of his brother in blue. Number one, he should not have even pulled me over, but he did. So, number two would be that he didn't have to play 20 questions with me and try to make me submit to his will. If he had just wrote up the ticket and let me go, I would have argued it very heavily in court. But Freddie was a dangerous cop. The type that like to say they are in charge, when the Constitution says you and I are not the government, and those in the government. And so because of his ego, we find ourselves here today. But the most direct reason why we find ourselves here today is because Frederick J. Stemp Jr.
was able to convince a judge that he feared me. He, along with a Braselton City detective named Joshua C. Cox, the Barrow County District Attorney Brad Smith, and Barrow County Magistrate Court Judge Jamie Crow, all agreed that the mens rea was there and they could prove it.
I decided to leave the East Coast. I would either buy the boat and sail it away, or I would drive my home to the West Coast. I decided to leave on the last day of my monthly rent. Now, during the time, I was in a deep depression. I was being ripped off by Martin Costa of Amazon and found out that he was also ripping off eBay and was being sued by them because of it. The way Martin Costa and his lawyer handling the case, I just started thinking about how everybody was trying to screw me over. On the 15th of December, 2018, I sent a threatening letter to one of the lawyers handling the eBay versus Amazon case. I challenged him to contact the FBI. I guess he might have. That night, the next day, I worked on my blog about Fred Stemp, this blog that you see. The morning of the 16th, I sent Amazon Kindle customer service a letter asking them where my royalties were, or was I going to have to go over there and start killing everyone. I was pissed. That night, I sent an email to Freddie as well, also stating that yet to be proven threat. Yet a threat credible enough to send Freddie Stemp into a panic. He being either not brave enough or capable enough to take me on, sought out professional help to lock me up and make sure he could sleep better at night. When those emails were sent, I wanted a courtroom fight so I could expose the POTUS. But that was too obvious to the FBI, who found out about them. Well, at least the one to Amazon. They wrote me and told me in so many words that the threats had to stop. I figured Fred would either go to the FBI as well, or more than likely he would blow it off as he did in the past. When I heard nothing after it, I just figured he blew it off, knowing that it must have been another idle threat. He was logging in a lot, and he logged in on Christmas last year and the year before last. And I saw him logging in the beginning of January, around the 6th, 7th. I figured, maybe he hasn't forgotten. So I'll send him a copy of my book and, ask him what he thinks, which is the question marks up there. I send him a little smiley face, if you notice, and the question marks, and I send that to him, but unknown to me, later in this day, if you notice the date is January 8th, 2019. All right, so he reads that in the morning, and I've got like when he logged on and all that stuff. And he runs off to Joshua Cox, this detective from Braselton, and he takes out a warrant for my arrest. It's obvious they didn't like what they read on my website and with my book, and they decided to put a stop to my rights of free press, speech, and religion as guaranteed by God in the First Amendment to the United States. This guy here, Cox, Frederick Stemp, Judge Crow, and Smith, the DA, the four of them said, the heck with this guy, let's lock him up. As January ended, I left Florida for Georgia to either buy a 30-year-old yacht in need of cosmetic work or drive to the West Coast. Either way, Fred Stemp was the last person on my mind. In February, I started my journey out of Florida. He never wrote me back or said anything, that book that I sent him. So, in February, I started my journey, and on the way up to Georgia, after getting gas in the town where the boat was at, I somehow hit this gas pump barrier and messed up the axle on my trailer, which hauls my motorcycle. And I had to have the axle on the trailer repaired. The owner of the boat showed me where I could have the work done, then left. The owner of the tire shop that I started out at was, kind of nice at first. The price was reasonable. He'd take a week, and then, soon the price went up, and then the damage went up, and then the price to fix it went up to the point where I couldn't pay for the work until the next month. We worked out a deal and paid him a little extra for that, just kind of waiting so that I could get the boat. But a week into the boat part pricing mission, I came across the same make and model boat in the Yacht Trader, only 1 year older. That was also in the state of Georgia. It's this boat right here, actual boat. Only with one problem: it was landlocked in Lake Lanier. So it would mean shipping it to a river that could get me out of the country. On a whim, I called the owner and we got to talking. He made me an offer that was too good to refuse, even with the shipping that I would need to have done. The boat was about 400 miles away, and the owner could only meet in the morning for a short amount of time. I booked a motel room about 100 miles from the lake and headed up. After I saw the boat the next morning, I went back to my RV, wrote the owner of the first boat, told him no thank you. We followed the weather to schedule another look-see at the boat. A couple of weeks later, I made the trip again, getting another room about 90 miles from the lake. I told the owner I would find a place to stay for the month of March while we finalized the sale of the boat. On February 28th, 2019, I paid for the new axle and work done on the trailer and drove to Jefferson, Georgia in Butts County. I needed to get the copyright I was expecting from the copyright office, but I told no one but a trusted friend that, where I was and, where to send me my copyright. Now, over the last few weeks, Without a Gun was listed for sale on Barn, but I told no one of it. I wanted to get in the boat and out of the country first, really, is what I was kind of looking to do. While doing my research on Amazon, I discovered that they did not print the books at Amazon Kindle. that they outsourced it to the Ingram Company, the largest book printer in the nation. I also learned that Ingram also did print-on-demand printing and had online stores for anyone to sell anything they printed. If I set up a store and directed all my sales to that site, I could make twice as much as just, on my royalties alone. I decided to set up that online store for good. However, on March 13th, while trying to set up my store, I discovered that Ingram was selling the hardback Barnes & Noble book that was only sold in that form at the Barnes & Noble site, and that they also had the Amazon paperback at the old price that I discontinued due to them ripping me off. Ingram was just going to do the paperback for me, the new one. And even though something didn't seem kosher with the situation, I could still make 3 times the profit than I could selling it with Barnes & Noble. I wanted to know how I could sell those issues in my store, as well as why did I find it being sold by Ingram. One was only sub to Barnes & Noble, and the other was discontinued from Amazon. Barnes & Noble were the only people I wanted selling the hardcover, but I started seeing it being sold all over Amazon. I told Amazon I'd never use them again to make or sell any of my books, and they would never sell anything published by Epiphany Publishing, my company. So I called Ingram and a customer service people. I had to deal with them in the past when trying to get my title transfer from Amazon to me. Ingram was telling me I didn't own the rights to the title. After a while, I was transferred to a supervisor that would know what is going on. He didn't, but he promised to find out and get back to me. 20 minutes later, I received an email from Ingram stating that upon further review, they have decided to cancel my account. I couldn't believe what I had just read. I got on the phone and I called the supervisor back to get to the bottom of what just happened. But he wasn't helpful. He wouldn't tell me why they were canceling my account, just that they were, and there was nothing I could do about it. I began to blow. I got on the internet and began to do research on this Ingram group to find out who they were. I found out they were one of the richest families in the country, being worth over $4 billion. But I knew what was up. As soon as they learned of the subject of my book and the fact that I had paid to have it featured in their planet-wide monthly, they decided to kill the project. They had pissed me off more than I think they understood at that moment. I gathered the email addresses of everyone at Ingram, from the Christian publishing department to the owner himself. I left the children's book department out of it, but the others I sent very nasty letters threatening to go there and pull a horrendous act, and told them why. I just wanted them to know what kind of a man they worked for. I was set up to buy the boat in a week. I was just pissed off and blowing off some steam. Over the next couple of days, I wrote more letters to Ingram, trying to get them in a dialogue. I was directed to their legal department, but no one there would identify themselves to me. On March 15th, just after watching a Red Hot Chili Peppers concert live from Cairo, Egypt, I sent an email to their legal department telling them that I wasn't really a bad guy, and all I wanted was their names and to know why my account was canceled without reason. I never heard back from them. Didn't matter. It was Friday evening. I figured I might hear back from them on Monday. If not, on Tuesday, I would write them again. On Wednesday, I was to buy the boat. Around 7:30 in the evening that day, while in the middle of watching Hardball, there was a knock on my door. It was the sheriff of Butts County, along with his goons. When I answered the door, all I was wearing was a long, dark bathrobe. Sheriff Gary Long threw me on the ground. He went through my pockets, pulled out a vape pen, threw it far away, then pulled me up. He told me I was under arrest for an out-of-county warrant for making terroristic threats in Barrow County. I knew exactly what this was about. I figured it must have been Ingram. He wanted to search my out-of-state RV for weapons and computers, and it didn't take a genius to figure out that if he was sent to with a warrant for my arrest, but not with a warrant to search, that he had no right to ask for such a request. Would he need a federal search warrant? Possibly. I politely told him no, and that I wanted to go back inside to get some clothes for jail. And for when they would be transporting me to the different jails, they were very insistent that I was going to. They basically told me I was under arrest and I wasn't getting out, not for the next 25 years, even if I tried. I asked him, can I go get some clothes? Because, it's kind of cold where I'm going. And he wanted everybody to go in, and I was like, no, just you come in with me, and, just me in handcuffs. And so the two of us, went in. My clothes are in the bedroom, I said. We both went to the bedroom where I opened up a drawer and pulled out a pair of white socks. I pointed to a pair of blue jeans and a shirt and asked him if I could change. No, he answered. I'll bring them with us. Just then, the other officers entered the RV and walked to the back. One was a pudgy oaf, the epitome of a cop, like Chief Wiggum, with the round face, beady eyes, pig nose, and a mustache. As I'm coming out of the bedroom, the big oaf is looking down at the counter where my wallet was. He picked up a small box that was also there and began to read it. He spoke, "Hey, boss, look at this here." The third one was asking me if there's any weapons on board and if he could search and the place for firearms and explosives, and also asked to search my computers. I walked over to the laptop and shut it so they couldn't get on it, while simultaneously saying, there are no guns or explosives in my computer. You don't need to search it. Are you saying we cannot search for explosives or your computers? The third cop asked again. I just told you you will not find any explosives in my computer. No, you can't search them. There are no guns anywhere on this bus. I could hear the big oaf telling the sheriff about what the box had printed on it. Where's the book? Someone demanded. This arrest had to be about Ingram. The funny, strange thing about all this was that not 3 hours before this occurred, I answered an email sent by the so-called legal team of Ingrams. My response was a shot in the dark. It said, "Look, I'm not a bad guy. Just tell me who you are so we can discuss why you closed my account." That was all. I would put that in quotes, but I'm not sure that, it's verbatim. I expected to copy it from my email account that sent it, but when I got my computers back from the police, that email was missing. They said they never searched it, but I could never believe that. Just then, I believe it was the sheriff who chased me down and grabbed hold of me. The others were right behind. They took hold of me and slammed me into the table that was between the two front captain's chairs. The table and its pedestal broke apart with my fall onto them. "You're here for Ingram, aren't you?" They just placed me in the driver's chair. Noticing the books on the passenger chair, I took possession of them. "You're here because of the books." The three gathered in the living room and holding one of the vape cartridge box. One spoke. "This is contraband in the state of Georgia and is a felony. We will be arresting you for." I saw them wearing their body cams, so rather than say something smart to them like I like to do, I just sat there moot. I had handcuffs on. I was already under arrest for that other thing. I was then walked out the door and placed in back of the police car because I refused. I was like, and they just took me out, put me in the car. It was like putting me in the bowels of hell, I'll tell you. There was death metal playing as loud as he could get it. It was a well-known fact that hippies cannot stand death metal. He knew who he was coming to get. It took a few minutes, but I was able to get his attention and have him lower the sound that was like driving me into a frenzy. In the car, I was very uncomfortable. The hard plastic seat and the very small area had my comfortability down to my claustrophobia at its height. I tried to make myself comfortable, but that task seemed impossible. The handcuffs were too tight and they were digging into my wrists. I kept an eye on what they were doing. About 10 or 15 minutes later, another car drove up and parked right in front of my lot. The high beams were on and pointed right at me. It was like he was illuminating me for the neighborhood to look at. I skirted down below the window so it appeared as if there was nobody in the car. A few minutes later, he caught on, cut off the lights. I sat back up I think I know who that officer was. I watched as the officers walked in and out of my home. I would not, sign anything consenting a search, so I figured they were just looking around. This lasted for about 20 or 30 minutes. After a while, I was getting very antsy. The bathrobe I was arrested in kept falling off me because of being handcuffed from behind. I was wondering how long they would be in there, waiting for me to search the warrant to be delivered. I tried to sleep, but I couldn't. I got one's attention, telling him I was willing to sign a consent form if it meant getting the handcuffs taken off. I believe it was the sheriff. They came over to talk to me. But you know what I'm realizing? I'm realizing that they were in my RV. I was under arrest. They had me under arrest in custody in their car. They had no search warrant, no right whatsoever to be in my RV. I want to know if they were breaking a law going in and out of this RV. So the sheriff, gets me out of the car and asked if I was now willing to sign a consent form for them to go look at, for guns and explosives. Apparently he didn't believe me when I told him that I had none on board. I looked over the consent form. It had computers on it, but again, I informed the one called Boss that they were not allowed to take or search the computers. I signed it, but made sure they could only look for guns and explosives, and they had to stay out of my computers. I told them that I just wanted this to go faster. I was very uncomfortable sitting in the car with my hands cuffed behind my back. Having the consent form signed, he placed me back in the car. I kept looking over at them, going in and out of my rig. I saw a tall guy with black hair walk out with my desktop computer and put it in his car. He was the guy who showed up after I was placed in the patrol. Not long following seeing him do that, one walked over and asked me if I wanted the rig towed to the impound lot or should they leave the keys with the manager. I told him to leave the rig right there. Leave the keys with the manager. I mean, hell, I was paid up through the month. I waited as they closed the door, but I couldn't tell if they had locked it or not. The one in charge got in the car, lowered the radio a little more, now that he was in it, called to his dispatch and drove away with me tied up in the back. The ride was uneventful. Not a word was said by either of us as we showed up at the jail. I could just imagine what awaited. But the jail surveillance will show who delivered me to the jail as the prisoner for Barrow County.
This is a 3-part series about Butts County, Georgia. It was removed due to being 30 minutes long. If you click on the small banner that just popped up above, that link will take you there. This will help tie the conspiracy together.
While I was still in the Butts County Jail, my mother was able to get hold of the police report, which contained the complaint that was filed with the local police in Barrow County. What was on it threw me for a loop. It was filed not by Ingram, but by Frederick J. Stemp, Jr. of Braselton, Georgia. That dweeb. I mean, I didn't even know it was him, So here I go, after the preliminary, I find out, I get this narrative. And it's by him, and he talks to this Detective Cox. It says, hands him his business card. But I know what he talks about the case here, and so now I can bring up that entire case at my trial. This case number 99-0833. I can bring that all up and relitigate that. So I realize it's not Ingram anymore. Having this new information and not knowing that it was not Ingram but Freddie, I began to ponder. I was a little surprised that the big mad Marine that weighs literally twice as much as I did would go to a grand jury to tell them that he was scared of me and incapable of defending himself should I happen to show up at his home or place of business. But I guess he must have been. I've seen every episode of Law and Order there is. The police and prosecutors work together and cannot go to a judge to get a warrant for a felony made against one of its citizens by someone somewhere in the world without enough evidence to indict. I thought, whatever they told the judge for the arrest warrant, they must have already told a grand jury. I have never heard of a warrant being issued without enough evidence to obtain a grand jury indictment at the same time. but there never was any grand jury indictment. There are several reasons why a judge would want to sign such an arrest warrant. The first is that the judge was in on it. Cox and or Stemp went to her and told her, one of a few things. One that could have been the truth. They read the book, and that was, that I sent that morning, and told her how I was writing unflattering things about dear leader, and I had to be stopped. Maybe, but doubtful. Another, they could have told her that I was clear and present danger to Fred Stemp, and I had to be picked up. The grand jury hadn't met since the complaint was made, and there wasn't enough time to wait for the next time. But regardless, if there was enough evidence to get an arrest warrant, there must have been enough to get an indictment with. So they told her they would get the indictment as soon as the grand jury met next month. Maybe they told her they would send the sheriff of Sarasota County to my house to pick me up. Well, that never happened. Maybe they told her they wanted to ambush me, because that is what they did. Didn't the judge ask them why they waited 3 weeks after the complaint was made to get an arrest warrant? Didn't she ask them if they would send the sheriff of Sarasota to pick me up? And who is them? Fred and Josh? Josh and the district attorney Brad Smith? An ADA? They had my address. This is just too suspicious. The grand jury had met on 8 separate days over the past year. Actually, it's been 10 now. And there is still no indictment. They don't even have this listed. You could call up and ask them, what is the status of my case? And they'll tell you they don't even have a case. The clerk of court will tell you a case does not exist with my name on it. So what did they really tell the judge, The judge was, Judge Jamie Hutchinson Crow. I'd show you her picture, but I couldn't find one of her anywhere on the internet. But I found this picture of her house. I don't understand why she would sign, such a serious warrant unless Cox and or maybe Stemp demonstrated criminal intent in their letter from 3 weeks previous in December. The fear in Freddie must have been prevalent to the judge. I must have been considered a clear and present danger to Fred. A need to get me off the street now was imminent. When I was delivered to the Barrow County Jail, it wasn't too pleasant an experience. Well, first off, they went through all my stuff. They opened up the envelope that Butts County wouldn't mail out for me the morning that I left to be brought to Barrow County. That sealed envelope was addressed and stamped in part of the mail. I'm quite sure it is a federal crime to open it. Then they were able to read all my work, legal and personal. They inspected my legal books and they kept everything. They placed me in lockdown. So me and one other inmate had the entire cell block. I asked why, but they never gave me a reason. 2 or 3 days later, and I was moved to the next block over. Still isolation, but this time with a roommate who had just gotten out of the sick bay for trying to kill himself. I guess I was to be his babysitter. A cell just 6 foot by 10 foot with bunks, a toilet, a shower, 23.5-hour lockdown, protective custody they called it. On June 7th, my second day in there, I was brought before the magistrate judge for my first appearance. There was nothing routine about it. Someone must have blabbed about what happened at my preliminary hearing in Butts County, because this was where we can see what Barrow County is trying to pull over on me. At first appearance, the judge, Judge Durden, seen here, set my preliminary hearing date for over 90 days in the future. That's right, 95 days in the future, to be exact. Barrow County. You lawyers know that these people talk. They know their people messed up. After learning what I did at the preliminary hearings in Butts County back in April, Barrow County decided to make sure I never received one in their county. This only added to my suspicions of Judge Crow and her decision to sign the arrest warrant. Associate Magistrate Judge Monica Amelia Hunter Durden said we all had the right to motion to the court for preliminary hearing if we decided to. There it is, right there at the bottom of the order for bond. We bail out. We still had the right to ask for one. They didn't have the right to give it, but So I had to wait in jail for 3 more days as I was awaiting arranging for certain items to be delivered to the bondsman that I would need when I got out, like money. The jail wouldn't give me anything, not a piece of paper or a pen to write with. On the evening of June 12th, 2018, I bailed out. I got a motel room in town for the night. Then the next morning took care of things I needed, like clothes, phone, shoes, debit card. Then I walked at least 3 miles back, to the jail complex to file that motion for a preliminary hearing. That judge said that I could do, and so I wasn't going to wait 3 months to face my accuser, but I still wanted this hearing if I, had yet to be indicted. And no one has ever told me I was indicted. I took out a piece of paper. I mean, they were going to give me a preliminary hearing. So I took out a piece of paper and wrote on the motion. I wrote up the motion right there. Right there it is. That's how I wrote it up, right there in front of them. And then I filed it, and I delivered a copy to the district attorney office headed by Brad Smith. Bradley. And then I started my difficult journey back to Florida, which took a few days after that. I don't know who Judge Durden was trying to protect. The cop Cox or the judge Crow. One, if not both, made a technical faux pas. Maybe it is Sheriff Gary Long and his deputy, Garrett Vick. I mean, they sure messed up this arrest, and no one signed the arrest warrant as to who executed the arrest. Who would I have gotten to question at the preliminary hearings, for arresting me? I mean, after I did to the arresting, officer, Garrett Vick, I mean, at my Butts County preliminary hearing, I have no doubt they didn't want me to have one in their county, and that is exactly why Durden was delaying my hearing. She got exactly what it was designed to do. She got me to bail out of jail without one, but I still had my motion, right? Back home, I retrieved my RV and began to do the repairs needed after the acquaintance trashed it, retrieving it from Georgia while I was in jail. I also waited for both cases to begin. However, I never heard anything back from Barrow County. Butts County, however, they decided to indict. And it took me over a month to get back to the items that Butts County Sheriff stole from my house the night of the arrest. The computer and electronic equipment, phone, tablets, books. They even took the missing keys. The missing keys were in my property. That Vic kept telling my mother was, I gave him to the lady in the office. His name was not even on the inventory slip. The sheriff's office told me that at the jail that those items would be following me to Barrow County when I was released from Butts County, but they never did. I kept asking for them to be returned to me, but they kept telling me they were holding them for Barrow County. After a few weeks, they finally told me I could go up there and retrieve them. That, they weren't going to go to Barrow County after all. I wondered about that. Again, they could not get a warrant to take possession of my computer and books. I guess that was because the investigation was done and completed on January 8th, 2019. They had all the evidence for the arrest warrant as much as they had the evidence for the grand jury indictment. They never had a need for those items. I mean, if they just wanted to search as part of their investigation, then they would have just came with a search warrant, not an arrest warrant. They would have searched them first to see if, you know what I'm saying? So why did the Braselton Police Department request them and the Butts County Sheriff steal them then? Well, months went by. It was past the September 11th date for my preliminary hearing. That was to be set by Judge Durden. This was a simple motion for a preliminary hearing. It should have been ruled on immediately. There was no conceivable reason for the judge not to have ruled. In late September, October, I ended the case in Butts County in order to work on this way more important case of Barrows. It was over 4 months since my first appearance, and I was still to have my preliminary hearing, or the motion for one ruled on. Since they were delaying my justice from happening, I sent a motion to dismiss to the court and to the district attorney Brad Smith's office. That must have lit a fire under someone's ass and put someone in a tailspin, because within 24 hours of the motion to dismiss having been received and logged into the record, the morning of October 17th, the decision for both motions, plus a motion I never made, had been ruled on. The judge who ruled on the motions was Chief Magistrate Court Judge Carolyn Power Evans. The ruling made no sense. Off the top, she had on the order denying me my motion that one of them was a motion for a speedy trial. Yet I made no motion for a speedy trial. That is a motion made at arraignment. Then she rules on the motion for preliminary hearing. There she states that they do not have to grant a preliminary hearing after a prisoner has bailed out. I know my order for bail has never gave me that guarantee, but this charge was based on a frivolous warrant. If Judge Evans' intention was to deny me my preliminary hearing the entire time, why then did she rule on that? Why didn't she rule on that the first day I submitted the motion? Does the motion to dismiss have to be turned in to the grand jury? Well, then she ruled on the motion to dismiss. She states that even though she had the jurisdiction to rule on the motion to dismiss, she could only do that at a preliminary hearing. That statement is in contradiction to what Judge Rebecca Pitts told me when I motioned to have that case dismissed. Rebecca stated that it was not her job to hear motions to dismiss, just to determine whether the arrest was good. Evans continued that since I was out on bail and not in jail, the motion for a preliminary hearing was denied. And since the prelim was denied, the motion was moot. What she was basically saying was that the arrest and charge were good, and there was no reason to question any of it. In fact, they might have well gone to the grand jury and gotten an indictment by now. Whose side is she really on? I want you guys, you people, you guys, to go and read that motion to dismiss. Click on the link and read that, because it's quite interesting. So from that point there, the case is to be sent over to the district attorney's office. There, a file is made with the clerk of Superior Court, and the case goes to the grand jury. The Superior Court clerk claims the magistrate court sent it to the district attorney's office, but the Superior Court clerk has no file of it. If you were to call them, they'd be like, "No, we don't have any case under his name." Even though the grand jury met for 2 days in between the time the DA, Brad Smith, had it and today. In December of 2018, I was feeling pissed off because Amazon had stolen the royalties to my book without a gun. My hatred of liars had me thinking of Frederick J. Stemp, Jr., the man who lied on the stand, ruined my chances for employment, and sent me to jail for a long time. On December 15th and 16th, I sent threatening letters to them both. I was so angry that I sent one to Frederick J. Stemp, Jr. on the night of the 16th. On the morning of the 17th, Freddie opened that email and clicked on the link that I had sent him. From that moment on, I tagged his IP address and was able to follow him and a few other computers around seven that he told of or used. Unknown to me, Freddie must have been very scared, because later that morning, he went to the Braselton Police Department and told them what happened. 45 minutes after Fred's first login, someone in Stone Mountain logged on. And then at 6 p.m. that evening. They also came on at 8:30 a.m. the next morning. 1 hour after that, someone logged on from Suwanee, Georgia. Then I saw the Atlanta log on the 19th, and I wondered if Fred went to the FBI. I sure hoped for it. I could just imagine, what the FBI would have told Fred. And Fred came back on the next morning, on December 21st and the 22nd and the 24th. And then I made a technical faux pas. On the morning of December 24th, I noticed Fred log on to the blog. I got ready to send him an email, but never got around to it. other than addressing one to him. The next morning I saw it open and went to delete it, and hit the wrong button by mistake, sending, a blank email to Fred. It was basically send and delete were actually really right next to each other. There was nothing I could do about it. However, 2 emails, and he was yet to answer me back. I was sure he blew me off, just like the other times. But little Freddie logged back on to the blog after receiving the blank email. Well, someone from Winder did. Then Lawrenceville, then Atlanta. Then Fred the next morning. A lot of logins from Stone Mountain followed on the 27th of December. Then in the evening after 5 o'clock, came one from Braselton, Georgia. And I knew this was related to Stemp, but this one was different. This one went to the blog and downloaded all the pages. Whoever they were was happy. I was happy. They were reading some truth. In January, I learned that the FBI was looking to speak with me. It had to be the letters, I contacted them. They wanted me to stop threatening the employees of Amazon, but they said nothing about Fred. I figured that Fred just ignored me again. However, he was very interested in what I was publishing about him. He's always on that website. The FBI knew I was going through some shit with Amazon, and they knew I was just blowing off some steam. So on the 6th and 7th of January, there was a lot of activity on the blog as well. I had Fred's page down, so they read other pages. I was glad they were taking an interest, and I decided it was time to send Fred an olive branch, even though I was through with him and he probably with me. But perhaps a gift will help him to understand. Maybe he will join me. On the morning of January 8th, when I saw all that activity on the blog site over the past 2 days, I decided to send Freddie a copy of my book. He has known about it since the summer of 2015 when I first reached out to him. I sent him not only a link to his blog, but to my website. This year I have a copy of the ebook I could send him. So, at 6:56 a.m. on the morning of January 8th, 2019, I send Freddie a copy of the book with 3 or 4 question marks on the text area to symbolize I want to know what he thought of me and his dear leader now, but never heard back from him. And I guess he just ignored me. Fred logged on at 7:23 a.m. His page was still not up at the time. At 10:15 a.m., the Stone Mountain IP address logged on, and again after 7 p.m. However, by the end of the business day, the detective spoke to Frederick. Back in December, had written a warrant for my arrest and had it signed by Magistrate Judge Crow. I sent a threatening letter to Amazon and to Fred Stemp on December 16th, which apparently scares Fred into going to the police. Well, it scared Amazon too. They went to the FBI. Neither he nor anyone else ever contacted me to tell me to stop writing him. On Christmas, I sent him an empty email by accident. Again, no response telling me to stop contacting him. The FBI contacts me about the Amazon letter, but not Fred's. I figured Fred never went to the FBI and instead just obsessed over the blog. I sent him an olive branch on January 8th, 2019. He goes to Joshua C. Cox and talks him into taking out and locking me a warrant and having me locked up. There must have been something in that book that scared the bejesus out of him that he would make this request for my arrest that we can explore at trial. I'll take out that book and I'll read every sentence off it, ask him if that's the sentence that pissed him off. So Detective Cox goes to the Barrow County Magistrate Court and gets Judge Jamie Crow to sign us the warrant. Let's explore this. Now, this warrant was taken out 3 weeks after Fred Stemp reported the letter to the police. So he makes his police report the day he gets the letter, and 3 weeks later, the warrant is taken out. So what happened in those 3 weeks? Why did Cox wait so long? If Fred was scared for his life, why would he wait 3 weeks to get the warrant? Why did it take that long? I don't know what kind of investigation this Cox fellow did, but I can tell you he never wrote me, never called me. Could he be one of the other IP addresses I was tracking? Hard to say this time, The only thing I can think of is that he was either the Braselton IP or one of the others from Stone Mountain that was downloading everything. Either way, he was able to determine the criminal intent on my end in just, those 3 weeks after my initial contact in December. Really, the only thing I can think of is it was the icing on the cake was that the fact that he didn't like reading the book that I sent Freddie that day. I'm sure he sent that book to Cox, and Cox didn't like reading that at all either. I can think of no other reason, to arrest me other than I wrote bad things about Dear Leader. I mean, he's gone through this before. He told the police in his report. He threatens me every couple of years. So why is this different? I'm sure, Cox told Freddie back in December that, yeah, if you ever hear from him again, give me a call and, we'll show him who's in charge. So who goes to the judge? Is it Freddie or is it just Cox? Or is it Cox and Fred Stemp? What do they tell her? How do they explain the 3 weeks it took from the time Fred got the letter until then, when they stood in front of the judge? What did they tell her of their investigation? The only way the judge would have signed the warrant was if there was enough evidence to go to the grand jury with. Did Judge Crowe expect Detective Cox to call the Sarasota County Sheriff and have him pick me up right away? Did he or they tell her that? When the police report was taken, the officer placed on it that my address, was unknown, but the warrant had my address on it. Didn't the judge question why this wasn't a matter for the FBI? Maybe they told her the truth, that I was a Dear Leader hater and writing things against Dear Leader, and they want to show me who's in charge. I also say bad things about Fred's religion. I believe that could be it. If they told her the real truth about the evidence, the only threatening letter was the one sent to him in December that day, and no further threats in the 3 weeks since. So how do they explain their justification for getting a warrant after the alleged threat was received? They didn't call the sheriff and have me picked up. Rather, they decided to have me ambushed by an unsuspecting cop in another state where I would have to sit there up to 30 days awaiting extradition to Georgia. They decided not to get me since I am in another state and not a threat to Stemp. Yeah, I'm no threat to him. They leave me there and they drop the charges on day 30, wherever they pick me up. Oh, he's in another state, drop the charges. Cox had to have known who I was. I mean, you can find pages and pages on me in, various search engines. And whenever, just different spellings of my name. My phone number is easy to find, and if you look for a good 5 or 10 minutes, you may even find my address, which he obviously had. He must have found my YouTube channel and watched the videos of my encounters with the police. He must have found and read other blogs that I have out there. All the videos on me with the Occupy movement. I guess he was just pissed off and wanted me out of the way. Or someone from Washington did. From when they took out the warrant, I had been trying to decide which path I wanted to take. I wanted to get back to the West Coast where it is peaceful, either by driving or cruising. In February, I left Florida for the West Coast via the stop in Georgia to look at the boat I found online. While searching for parts for that boat, I found another one that was hundreds of miles away. That beautiful boat right there. I decided to drive the 400 miles to go look at it. And if it panned out, everything would be good. And I could even have it shipped on a flatbed. So I drove my motorcycle to a motel room, about 90 miles from the boat. And then I met the owner the next day. And I loved it. And I decided, to forget about the other boat and buy this boat right here on the lake. I had to make one more trip to see it while I was broke down behind the tire shop. The final decision. And, that decision I would either buy the boat or drive out west via Interstate 10. I did the same thing I did last time. I drove about 90 miles and then drove to the boat the next morning. Oh, and by the way, on both drives up there to see the boat, I drove within less than 30 miles of Frederick's house in Braselton, and he never entered my mind. If my desire was to throw away my life to kill him, it would have happened last year or one of the years before. The boat was a go, and then I, located the campground and had a spot there for a month and moved in on March 1st and waited, so I could have a competent sea trial. If I had known that there was a warrant for my arrest in Georgia, I would have never stopped there. Actually, if I had known, I would have turned myself in. I guess it didn't matter anyway. No matter which state I was going in, I was going to get ambushed and arrested anyhow. The one thing I did like to know, though, one thing I would like to know, is how did Butts County Sheriff Gary Long know I was there? Now, I don't always check my stat counter logs, But on March 2nd around noon, someone from Fred's Stemp tracking logged on. He logged on again on the 12th and had other things on my mind, like getting out of this country. And the Ingrams, of course, who had been logging on also the same week of my arrest. All I ever wanted to do was leave this country. On March 15th, I am arrested by ambush. I am arrested by Sheriff Gary Long, but his name is nowhere on the police report. And a new deputy to the sheriff's office, a 25-year-old kid on his third job, Garrett Vick, testifies that he was the arresting officer. That is perjury for Vick and suborning perjury for Long. While in the Butts County Jail at the preliminary hearings, I told many officers of the court about the perjury and suborning of perjury. I told Rebecca Judge Pitts, ADA Greg Fudge, ADA James Moss, and the District Attorney Jonathan L. Adams, among some, but none of them would do anything about my complaint. I thought of these people had to report all crimes, that's reported to them. At my first appearance in Barrow County, Judge Durden sets my preliminary hearing date for 95 days in the future. Unheard of anywhere at any time. You could not arrest someone and set a date 95 days in the future. I wrote a lawyer asking him about preliminary hearings, and without telling him my date was for 95 days in the future, the lawyer told me that it is set 10 to 14 days after first appearance. Very seldom will be a month in the future, even though I was never given a preliminary hearing date at my first appearance in Butts County, so I had to motion for it. He said I might get one for a month in the future, but only if I motion for it, and even then that's, rare. He said there's no way they would schedule it longer than that. When I told him mine was scheduled for 95 days in the future, he wished me good luck, but said he couldn't help. Sure. Judge Durden did a lot of things you would not expect for a case of this type. Well, first thing she did, is she stared at the booking charge for almost 15 seconds. She picked it up and stared at it. The others she only stared at for a few seconds. But with mine, she was like reading something, like there was a note there. Next, she gave me bail, something I did not think was going to happen since I was from out of state. And they caught me in their state, figuring I was there to kill Freddie. And this was less bail than Butts County for having 3 large joints on me. I was from 500 miles away, and I told the court that. They didn't care. She trusted me to show up enough to give me a $4,000 bail. Not only that, but the only condition I had was to stay 300 feet away from Frederick J. Stemp, Jr. Really? These people who feel I'm a clear and present danger to Frederick Stemp, but they let me out of jail without an ankle monitor to make sure that I stay away and only 300 feet? That sounds like a restraining order to me. I would have killed him in December or in February when I drove by his house, or the minute Judge Durden released me from jail. It is obvious that she is in on this conspiracy. The warrant was never signed by the arresting officer. Garrett Vick declares on his written report, and also testified in court, that he was sent to my home to get me for Barrow County. Who would have showed up at the preliminary hearing? One thing the judge told everyone there was that if we were to bail out, we had the right to petition the court once we bailed out, and I didn't want to sit there for another 95 days, so I did it. I'm in protective custody on 24 hours lockdown, for no reason. So I had to wait for some things to be delivered to me, so I bailed out the next week during the evening. While waiting, tracker of Fred Stemp's hit on June 11th. I bailed out 2 evenings later. I was planning to bail out on the 11th, and then that night, I got a room in town. The next day, I walked back to the courthouse to file the motion, dropped off a copy. Nothing further is heard from them. Meanwhile, I work on the Butts County case. They indict on the first go-around, but they could have indicted, back on July 11th, but I continue to try to get my body cam footage. I sent a letter to the Butts County Sheriff's Office. That was on August 1st. I never heard back from them, but 2 hours after that request was sent, an IP address logged on from a Comcast business account located just a few hundred feet from the Barrow County Sheriff's Office. It had to be the sheriff, unless, Sheriff Gary Long was in his building at the time. I mean, I can't figure out why they would go just 2 hours. She ignored me, and then 2 hours after I send the letter, they go on. So I write back, and I'm wondering why she never answered my letter, asking her for some information. Why is it a coincidence that this IP address shows up? So she writes back telling me that I had to get the body cam footage from the sheriff's office, and she was just a 911 operator, but asking them, and a few lawyers since the arrest to get it for me, and no one would. Long just blew me off. There were other ways of obtaining that video. I sent an internal affairs complaint to this guy here, Captain Bruce Knight. I told him what happened, and he says he did an investigation. Every time I tried to ascertain whether he viewed the body cam footage, he never gave me an answer, and he never sent me a report. So Captain Bruce Knight, he blows me off. I'm getting nowhere trying to defend myself and expose these corrupt police officers and the employees of Butts County. On August 22nd, I file a motion to dismiss with the Butts County Courthouse, Superior Court, and I'm sure, this got their panties in a wad because they never ruled on it, nor put it in their hearings calendar. Not only that, they may not have even filed it. When I got a copy of the file at the final hearing, the motion did not have a filed stamped on it. Instead, was handwritten in. It was handwritten in a pencil, I think. Just the date, time, and the word Keene, the court clerk at the bottom of the page. The case number and had changed, and that was written in as well. So if that's not how the court was supposed to do it, it might not be in the real file if you were to request the file today. Every time I call to see if it was placed on the docket, I get a negative. I didn't do it. And then a month later, I finally get Judge Wilson's clerk to put it on the docket. And it's funny, too, because that day that they put me on the docket, Fred Stemp logged on, too, around the same time. So, I've got that on record, too. So, on October 9th, I had that motions hearing. I pled out to something that I never did, and the judge accepts it, from looking at 10 years in prison for 3 large joints to a no-low plea to a misdemeanor possession of marijuana. These 3 large joints that I spoke of were really those 3 grams of marijuana oil, a felony. So I walked out of there never having to go back, unless for my appeal. And I'm not allowed back in Butts County unless passing through on the interstate. But I guess I can show up to file an appeal. Any lawyer who takes this Barrow County and federal law case, find someone to do the appeal for Butts County. If you can't do it, find someone for me that can, pro bono for me. You can pay them. But instead of, 1/3 the take, I'll start the bidding out at 1/2. So it's up to you if you want to offer me more. But right now we're going to split it 50-50 with you. And the decision of who I go with will be based on your reputation, whether, I think you can get me $3 million, and how much above 50% you're willing to give me. But it doesn't, you don't have to give me anything above 50%, really. I just a thank you for, letting you help. So, a few days later on the 14th, I did some work on the Fred Stemp blog. Not 90 minutes after I uploaded the page, Freddie logged on to see what it was. He even logged on the next day. I had a feeling he had my computer hacked from the start. I relayed this information to a Major Steffman with the Braselton police, who was doing an internal affairs investigation, Josh Cox, for the way he did his investigation. I suggested that he take possession of my computer to search it for any viruses or malware. He answered that letter by ignoring the question and telling me that he had finished up the investigation. He also said he found nothing out of the ordinary and was not sending me a copy of the report. Yet they still won't bring it to a grand jury. Not out of the ordinary. Bruce Knight from Butts County, he told me he finished, never sent me a report, so I doubt one exists. On October 16th, Major Steffman logged on to Fred's page using a proxy. It was now time to concentrate on Barrow County. I was getting pissed off being ignored by them. It was October, and I was still to hear about the preliminary hearing. I wrote up a motion to dismiss, not unlike the one filed in Butts County, and on October 17th filed it. You can trust me on this one. It lit a fire under Judge Powell. By noon time the next morning, Judge Powell had a written response denying my motion, plus a motion I never made for a speedy trial. So Judge Powell delayed the ruling, denying me justice and allowing me the time to write the motion to dismiss, which would have been handled at the preliminary hearing. I'm not sure I was going to get one. And having all that time I wanted, I wrote and filed a motion to dismiss. Aww. This case was referred over to the Barrow County Superior Court. The next grand jury meeting was set for 2 days in November and December. After not hearing back from the court, in December, after not hearing back from the court as to the status, I called him up and learned that Brad Smith hadn't filed it and wasn't filed. So what's his deal? Oh, other than making the 2 videos on Christmas morning, this is where I stand today. You got to see those videos on Christmas morning. On Christmas morning, Frederick J. Stemp is looking at the blog. I mean, that's how obsessed he is with it. And all he wants is, he wants it out, but he can't do that, because I have my freedom of speech. And he can't get a restraining order on me, so he goes and has me arrested. This is where we stand today. I'll make one more call, shoot them the update. Folks, this is war for me. I pose a great threat to the reputation of the president with my book and this lawsuit. He has done a great job of making sure it never hit the mainstream. My book, Without a Gun, was available at Barnes & Noble on the day Joshua Cox took out the warrant for my arrest after receiving a copy of it. In fact, I believe it may have been published for the very first time with Barnes & Noble on January 8th. No, actually it was February 2nd. But since they canceled my account for no reason, given, unknown to me, while I was sitting in jail, I would have no way of proving what the date was that it went on sale for. So there's no doubt that all these people are what I called in my book Trump-tards. They are all conspiring in violation of Title 18 of the United States Code, Section 241, for one. Okay, these respondents are at war with me because of my political and religious beliefs. Do not align with theirs, and because of my book Without a Gun. They can't handle the truth. And I'm sure my political or religious beliefs don't align with a lot of theirs, with a lot of those viewing this video as well. I'm not in any tribe. They don't like that fact that I'm not in theirs, and I'm only spreading some harsh truth about their dear leader. But the one thing that we can all align with is the Constitution and my right to free speech and to be free from these persons conspiring to injure, oppose, threaten, or intimidate me in my free exercise or enjoyment, and of any of these rights secured to me by the Constitution or laws of the United States. Their main objective in this arrest was to, and still is, in protecting their dear leader, Don Trump. And it worked. Just ask Barnes & Noble. They all got together and said, "Who does this guy think he is? We'll show him who's in charge." They set out to do it, and they did it. They cannot now just end this case without giving me due process because they got caught. As far as, where this case is, I wrote to Barrow County Superior Court clerk last week, and they tell me that the district attorney has yet to file it with the clerk, again for the 10th time. Brad Smith failed to bring Fred Stemp to the grand jury to tell them what he told Judge Crow. He's refusing to prosecute. I will be suing the following entities and individuals. I will be asking of the individuals the last 3 years' W-2s added together. That will be the amount everyone will be sued for. Also, there will be a prayer for each of the individuals to lose their government jobs and benefits for life as well. The fictitious entities will be sued for no less than $300,000 each. They are the GBI, Butts County, Braselton City, Barrow County. Private individuals who will be sued: Patient 0, Frederick J. Stemp, Jr. From Butts County, we have Sheriff Gary Long, Deputy Garrett Vick, Lieutenant Young, badge number 701, Captain Bruce Knight, Investigator Montgomery, Amber Estrada of the Butts County Sheriff's Office, Jail Guard Sergeant Henderson, Jail Guard Grady McMichael, Jail Guard Sergeant Cox, Jail Guard Balcom, unnamed jail medical staff, still to be named. The following people from Butts County were told of the crime and did nothing to help me. Judge Rebecca Pitts, Judge Wilson, Public Defender Steve, ADA Greg Fudge, ADA James Moss, District Attorney Jonathan L. Adams, lawyer from that area, Mr. William Turner. From Braselton City, Braselton Police Detective Joshua C. Cox, Police Internal Affairs Major Michael Steffman, Chief of Police Terry Esco. And from the City of Barrow County, or from the County of Barrow County, Associate Magistrate Judge Jamie H. Crow, Judge Monica Duran, Judge Carolyn Power Evans, unidentified jail guard who opened my mail, Sheriff Judge Smith for employing such said guard, and District Attorney Brad Smith for conspiring with these people to have me arrested. Thank you.